So my talk title this morning is Ye Are Gods, the Revolutionary Message of Christ. I heard Joseph Campbell one time talking about that he had heard this story about a disciple of the Dalai Lama had had a discussion with a Catholic priest. The Catholic priest had gotten a little long-winded, talking about the piety of the Christian faith. Finally, the Buddhist priest had had enough of it, and he leaned over to him and he told the priest, he says, "You know, it sounds like a great religion. Somebody ought to give it a try sometime." Now, that may be an unfair question, because the truth of the matter is the teachings of Christ are revolutionary. They were revolutionary. Holmes says, if you really want to understand the ministry of Christ, he said, just focused on the red letters of the Bible. That's all you have to worry about. Thomas Jefferson did the same thing. There's a book called the Jefferson Bible, and what that is Jefferson went through the Bible and he cut out the red letters and pasted them into another book. He didn't tell anybody about it until after he died, and now it's called the Jefferson Bible. Because when you look at the ministry of Jesus, something very interesting appears. He didn't really focus a lot on sin. That wasn't his central message. Go and sin no more was his automatic reply to people who wanted to confess. He was basically telling them, forgive yourself, because this is really the hardest challenge we have, forgive ourselves, and go out there and do the best you can. Forgive yourself and go out there and do the best you can. And that's a powerful spiritual teaching. If we just focused on that, we could change the world. But unfortunately, there's almost no fundraising appeal in that at all. Tell people to stay positive, help one another, do the good you can, and you'll get a crumpled up dollar bill in the offering plate. Tell them they're worthless sinners, and God is just waiting to get his hands on them so he can fry them like a piece of bacon on an ungreased griddle for eternity. They'll throw money at you. But Christ was never about making people feel unworthy. His whole ministry was about narrowing the distance between God and ourselves. Over and over again, he kept welcoming people that had been excluded. Again and again, he extended compassion to people who had opposed him. The story of the Roman centurion coming to him, asking him to heal his servant. The Romans were the most hated people of Israel. They had their boots on the throats of the Jewish people. Jesus certainly would have been justified in saying, no, I'm not doing this for you. But instead, he went ahead and he healed the servant. He looked beyond the day-to-day challenges, and he looked within the souls of the people that were following him. Fear remains one of our biggest challenges. And Christ did not withhold compassion. He kept telling people over and over again, don't be afraid. Now that's radical. That's radical. Particularly when you're thinking about the times he was living in and the times we now are living in. I was thinking about my mom this week. My mom, she thought it was perfectly socially acceptable at any time to take a half a Valium. Not a whole Valium, that would have been gauche. But half a Valium, well, that showed respectability. It was like ordering a glass of sherry at a gathering, you know. It was like, oh, she's got some class here about her. So half a Valium. If she got some bad news from a relative, it was half a Valium. If she was headed off to a funeral, half a Valium, and she dispensed them like they were peppermint candies for anybody else in the gathering. If she got in the car with me, it was definitely a half a Valium. The other day I got up, I turned the TV on, and I didn't really realize it was on one of the news channels. You know, one of those channels where people with smiling faces tell you about the coming Armageddon. It's like, why are these people so happy? And I'm sitting there, and I just had a momentarily glimpse of her sitting there with me, and she was gobbling down her Valiums like she had a box of Tic Tacs. I can appreciate her sentiment. Fear has always been with us. It's part of the human experience. And actually, I think we like it a little bit. Just to be truthful, I think we like it a little bit. The headlines may change, the worries change, the names change, but fear remains remarkably creative. But Christ demonstrated that he could have a relationship so close to his Creator that there was no room for fear. He said, I and the Father are one. Now, this whole idea of being one with God, that's a pretty tall order. So I encourage people, just add an extra vowel to God. Just add an extra O. And so instead of working on God, just focus on good. Because it may be difficult to think I'm one with God, but I can be one with good. I can be one with helping people in life. I can be one with bringing more love and more compassion. So if I can't be one with God, at least I can be one with good. And particularly that good that's trying to express through us. And if you can't be one with God, or even the good, just remember you're human after all. And at least recognize the good and acknowledge the good and say, well, next time, I can do better. And don't beat yourself up about that. Now, this past week, I had an experience that I'll have to share with you. And it's something that I don't want necessarily to own up to. It's a secret. I know it's going to go no further than this room. But some things I get along with very well in life. Some life forms just naturally are attracted to me. I have a natural kind of ease with them. Dogs, babies, and strangely enough, theater people. They just fall all over me. People throw babies at me. They will throw a baby at me, and I can get them giggling and laughing. Same thing with dogs. A minute with a dog, they're going to be on their back. I'm going to be rubbing their tummy. Same thing with theater people. One time I happened to got invited to a rap party. You know, after the movie was done, it was a rap party. It was called for a movie called Serial Mom. They had done it in Baltimore. I was living in Washington, D.C. I was best friends for a guy that was in the movie. So he invited me to the rap party. And of course, they were all just gaga over Kathleen Turner. She had played the main role. And everybody was trying to get with her. Well, who did she fall in love with? Me. I mean, we didn't exchange phone numbers or bread pudding recipes, but we really had a moment. Now, as much as I get along with that group of people, there's another segment of people and life forms that I'm not so good with. And those happen to be cats. Cats. Put me in a room with a cat, and at some point, the cat and I are going to have a challenge. Yeah. I'm not so good with pompous people. That doesn't work out that well that much either. And the third person group that I seem to have a big problem with is medical, people who work in the medical industry. Now, I don't know why. I try to be nice, but just somehow, somehow it always seems to go sideways. And so I had a conversation with not even my provider, it was his office manager. And before long, the conversation had just it had become a train wreck, is what it had become. So I hung up, and I'm sitting there, and I can just feel myself, just I could feel the frustration in my body. And I had to own up to two things right from the start. I had to face two hard facts. The first one was, I could have used one of Mama's half Valiums. The second one was, I really wasn't exhibiting the unity with God that I want to aspire to. I had really missed the mark. And we call that a sin. Just a missing the mark. Not doing as well as I had envisioned for myself. So what did I do? Well, I did prayer work for myself. And then I went out and I did something kind of mundane. I changed the pottings of my orchids, repotted my orchids. I did prayer work for the poor soul who had the misfortune of getting hold of me on that Friday afternoon. So I did prayer work for her. And I just gave myself permission to be human, You see, even Christ, he didn't move through life without problems. He was criticized, he was misunderstood, and he ultimately was betrayed by people who he loved. Yet none of that stopped him from returning again and again to the message of love, to compassion, and to forgiveness. And not even returning to that message, but living that message. Being willing to put himself out there. Perhaps being one with God doesn't mean that we don't lose our balance. Perhaps this means we learn how to find our way back more quickly, more easily. Because life's going to come along and it's going to throw us for a challenge. And our goal is to come back to that balance, come back to that understanding, come back to the realization of who we are and what we've come to life to do. We're here in life to witness ourselves being channels of God's love and creativity, to being that wonderful sign and source of love and compassion. And this brings us to probably the most radical message Christ had. And Christ, this was, ye are gods. Ye are gods. Now imagine hearing those words for the first time, not in a church, not after 2,000 years of explanation. Imagine standing in the streets of Jerusalem and hearing a rabbi tell ordinary people, you are not separated from God. You are one with God. It may be the most revolutionary idea ever spoken. Now, the story appears in the Gospel of John. Jesus was teaching to a group of people, and he said, I and the Father are one. Well, that got the religious authorities are upset, and they're saying, you're making yourself into God. And they began to gather stones. They were planning to stone him. And before they could do that, he asked them an interesting question. He said, it's written in the Psalms, ye are gods. Now, admittedly, he was kind of twisting what the psalmist had in mind. But still, he was using it and allow him to deflect their anger. And it gave him a moment to go to a deeper truth. He was saying if Scripture can recognize divine authority in ordinary human beings, then why aren't we all in unity with our Creator? All of us. Now, scholars have been debating what he meant for 2,000 years. And most Christian teachers try to stay away from that quote altogether. They don't really want to talk about it too much. But from a New Thought perspective, we think there's something profound here. Perhaps Christ was not trying to convince us that he was different from us. Perhaps he was trying to awaken something within us that we have forgotten about. That the very life expressing through us is divine. And we are here to acknowledge that, to live from it, to live from our highest aspirations of what we can be as humans, how loving and compassionate, the good that we can bring about. Now, many spiritual traditions, they will teach that we suffer from a form of amnesia. We've forgotten who we are. We're forgotten who we've come from. And that to know that which we are looking with, that which we're looking for, we are looking with. But Christ, he pointed us in the right direction. He says, the kingdom of heaven is within you. Again and again, he pointed towards the inner life, not to a distant God, but to an inner presence. And not one after we became all saintly and holy, not after somehow we can morph out of our humanness, but in the middle of our humanness, in the middle of our messiness, that we can aspire to a better idea. It seems like for the past couple of weeks, I've been talking about this idea of home. And not home as just a simple place with a roof over your head, but a place where you know you belong, a place of peace and connection. And we're all seeking that. And maybe that's what Christ was pointing us towards. Maybe home is not a destination. Maybe it's an awareness, a unity with our Creator. Maybe what Christ was revealing when he said, "You are gods," was that the deepest home any of us are going to find is our oneness with Spirit. To know we are loved. To know we are supported. To know what we're doing here is meaningful. To know that all the challenges and all the heartbreaks and all the disappointments have had a purpose. And that purpose is good. That purpose is lifting us all up. Imagine the life we would lead if we were convinced that the divine life is expressing through us, with us, exactly as we are. How would we live differently? How would we treat ourselves differently? How would we treat ourselves? And would we be so harsh with ourselves and each other? Would we cling so tightly to our resentment? Would we give up worrying so much? Because awareness changes behavior, not through force, but through understanding. The statement, "Ye are gods," that's not spiritual arrogance. It's spiritual responsibility. It doesn't mean I'm better than you are. It means I am an expression of the one life, and so are you. The wave is not separated from the ocean. The branch is not separated from the tree. The ray of light is not separated from the sun. We belong to something larger than ourselves. And that something is wanting to express through you. That something is wanting to be a channel of blessings. It is wanting to awe you with how much you're loved. So this morning, let us consider a radical possibility. What if we're not a broken person trying to find God? What if we are a spiritual being trying to remember our true nature? What if the presence you have been seeking all along is seeking expression through you? Perhaps Christ was not trying to separate himself from humanity. Perhaps he was trying to wake us up to a better knowing. Not to worship him, but to discover our own possibilities. Not to convince us that he was unlike us, but to reveal what is true about us. You see, the oak tree, it does not struggle to become the oak tree. The rose does not struggle to become the rose. It already is. It just becomes. And that's what we are here now doing. We are becoming the great blessing of Spirit here and now. Now, beloved, I know the challenges we're going through. I know the problems we are experiencing. And I know that we can sit back and say it's too much. But maybe it's not too much to keep us down. Maybe it's rising us up. You were Spirit's answer to every problem you'll ever face. And you have more than enough to face all the turmoil and confusion of the world today. You are Spirit's bright, shining light of possibility. And you are supported. You are loved. You are the way God is working in your life. So our challenge is not to give up, not to be discouraged, not to be waylaid by all the turmoil and confusion. Our challenge is to lift ourselves up, move out in the world, and become that bright, shining light of God's possibility, to become the most loving, joyful, wondrous self we can be. And when we are, we'll know that Spirit is leading us on. When we are, we'll know that the Christ consciousness is in our hearts and soul. It is the light before us, and we are going to create a new heaven and a new earth. Now's our time. This is our moment, and Spirit is calling us on. It's the truth in your life this morning. It's the truth in mine, and together we say, and so it is.